Good evening, fellow Plexers. Today's video is going out to Crystal, a new member of the Plexaholics Facebook support group. Something in one of her screenshots caught my attention, and it's going to be part of what I talk about tonight. But as a new member, I thought it was an opportunity to do a new member video of what might be important. So if you're brand new to Plex, the place to start is support.plex.tv/articles. Plex has articles on every subject, and we're going to cover a couple of them tonight. First of all, I'm going to scroll down to your media, this section. Plex tells us how to name movies and TV shows and how to get a music library going. So let's start on the TV side of things. And you'll see a lot of examples of non-compliant structures and file names in the group and in other groups. And my best suggestion to a new Plex server owner is to look at these support articles, and if you don't see Plex giving an example of how you're naming files, assume that your file names are not compliant. We all know non-compliant file names to a certain degree will scan just as well as compliant ones. But why not start off on the right foot? So without having to go through this support document fully, you can go to either TMDB or TVDB, and at TMDB you can just copy the show name and paste it as a show folder. At TVDB you can do the same thing and then manually add the year. Only a few series at TVDB will have the year. Plex always gives an example of season space 01. That's what I use. And then that proper show name is the first segment of different segments of the episode name. You notice Plex will always use a space in this support article as the official separator. We can surmise from one of the extra movie naming support articles that this can be replaced with a plain period, or this separator could be replaced with a plain period. But we can't replace every natural space with a period nor an underscore. So the first part of the file name is always the proper show, just as you have it named here. Then you have the separator and then the season episode coding. And the S and the E can be lowercase or uppercase. Again, the separator, and then optionally you can have the proper episode name as listed at whichever database you're using. So it's all the same. And then if you have one episode that doesn't, if you have one episode that's split across two files, you'll find in the article a few options to do a PT1 or a PT2 or a Part 1 and a Part 2 or a DVD1 and a DVD2. You can use whatever type of solution you want, but it has to be one of the approved shortcuts basically, and Plex will scan these two separate files as one single episode. And then there's some naming for date-based things, but basically it's pretty easy. And then there's two other things I want to talk about from this naming guide for TV shows. Under some important notes, you can use the source ID or the database number from either TMDB or TVDB. And we have to look at TMDB first, because when you first add a TV show library, the default setting to pull episode ordering is from TMDB, and you can change that globally for the library to TVDB, which is an aired ordering just like the TMDB order. Or at the show level, you can change from TMDB aired or TVDB aired to the other one, or to TVDB DVD order or absolute order. Now that's a little bit advanced, and I always suggest naming from TVDB for series and not TMDB for added flexibility. And some examples of that is maybe some cartoon series that the feature of the cartoon, the main character, might have been part of a show that was on air that contained other cartoons. Hanna-Barbera was famous for this. The original Yogi Bear cartoons were part of Huckleberry Hound. And then there was a spin-off of the Yogi Bear show. Well, there's an entry for Huckleberry Hound at both TMDB and TVDB. And then there's a special entry at TVDB for Huckleberry Hound only, Yogi Bear only, and so on. And that's kind of common with those Hanna-Barbera cartoons, because one DVD release might have repackaged the original broadcast show. Another one might have just cut out all the segments that involved Yogi Bear or all the segments that involved Snagglepuss and released that on DVD. And there won't be an entry for those special versions at TMDB, but there may be a virtual entry at TVDB. So I just rather name all my series to TVDB aired ordering and set the library up globally for that. Just because it's more flexible. Other flexible series would be the Looney Tunes, which was never a TV show. They were old movie shorts that started in 1929, and they continued on through all the decades. So you can add all that content under a virtual or a fake TV show listing instead of having these short 7, 8, 10-minute movie shorts in your movie library. There's like 1,000 or 1,100 entries at the Looney Tunes at TVDB, and there is no Looney Tunes entry at the movie database as a TV show. Only the individual movie shorts listed as movies. So there's tons of examples of TVDB being more flexible. But again, the default Plex series library, when you create it, pulls episode ordering from TVDB. And I show how to compensate for that in a lot of my other videos involving Filebot and things people have trouble scanning in. So now let's get to the movie main article. Now, TVDB has nothing to do with the Plex movie library, and the source ID for a movie library can either be IMDb or TMDB again. So a series listed at TMDB can't be added to a movie library, but a movie from TMDB can, and a series from IMDb cannot be added to a Plex movie library, but a movie from IMDb can. And IMDb has nothing to do with a Plex TV show library. So here's the source ID for IMDb, and here's a source ID example from TMDB. And you can add this to the movie folder, and you can also add it to the file name if you want. And we have lots of examples. So you copy the name of the movie from TMDB, it'll have the year as part of the proper name, or IMDb with a year, and that's the movie folder, and then the same thing for a simple file name. Now, there's a separate subtitle support article, but this gives an example of the Batman Begins 2005 movie folder, the Batman Begins 2005 movie, and an English subtitle in the SRT format being named that way. And this poster JPEG would be if you're using local assets fully, and that's a library advanced setting that you have to change in order to do that. So that's all basic Plex stuff. What I want to talk about now are the benefits of a Plex Pass. And I'm going to jump back to this main article, but first of all, the biggest benefit of a Plex Pass for Crystal or any other new user is hardware accelerated transcoding. And she switched her server from a KF Intel processor to a regular processor that has the iGPU. So basically, as long as the operating system is loading the driver for your CPU properly or your NVIDIA GPU, you can simply enable that in your Plex server settings. So this will look weird because I have multiple test Plex servers running. I'm going to stay with my older Synology NAS that has an Apollo Lake family Celeron processor in it. And if I'm into the web app, so I'm just into the settings area, and if I scroll to transcoder, this would be a default setting. If you're not running Windows on older Intel hardware, which has to be, I believe, Alder Lake or newer, you can enable HDR tone mapping. Under Linux, the older processors automatically have HDR tone mapping that can be enabled. So I think it's 11th gen, if I'm remembering right, it's 11th gen mobile processor or newer. An 11th gen desktop processor isn't new enough to have this feature under Windows. And the default algorithm is Hable. So this is where you'd check to enable hardware acceleration once you had the Plex Pass. Use hardware accelerated video encoding is checked, and I like to change auto to my actual iGPU or GPU to then save the changes. Now, this older Celeron processor isn't new enough to have the new experimental HEVC transcoding. If I switch to the test server on my newer Synology NAS, which is a 9th gen Celeron processor, there's also these new settings. Enable HEVC video encoding always, and enable HEVC optimization. So when you enable hardware acceleration and check these and save changes, these two will pop up. And you see how this test server is running a UHD graphics 600 iGPU. Even though it's a Celeron processor, it's just about as powerful as the pretty decent iGPU in an 8th, 9th, or 10th gen Intel desktop processor. So if I change back to the older NAS, this HD means something. So a 7th gen Intel processor, a lot of people think they're great, that's the level to get to, but it will still have an HD graphics, I think a 630 iGPU. You want the UHD on this range of processors until you get into maybe the Iris Xe or that sort of thing on some newer mobile processors. So hardware acceleration is great, and we're going to show you what that does for you. Let me make sure I'm on the right server. I'm going to start the Plex HTPC client app. There's a version for Windows, Mac, and Linux. This is what you want to use on your PC. The web app makes a poor client app. The HTPC client app has a great playback engine. So let me make sure I'm on dashboard of this test server. Then I have to get onto my regular Plex library to move to that test server. And I'll go to the 4K library, and I'll do something I can play easily. All right, so I'm just going to pause it and look at the dashboard. So this is a 4K AV1. I'm not going to be able to hardware accelerate transcode this on this older NAS because it doesn't support AV1. So let me change to a different version. Okay, so this is just a 4K encoded with H.264, and keep your eye over here when I transcode it. I'll force it into a 720p 4 megabit per second transcode. And even on this old processor, it starts up pretty easily, and you see it's now changing from 4K H.264 to 720p H.264. Now, if this was on the newer Synology NAS that supported the HEVC transcoding, it would turn it from H.264 to H.265, and it would end up being a smaller file that has to move across to a remote destination, which would make it easier to get there. So that H.265 transcoding is a really nice feature, and if you're not going to upgrade to a new enough Alder Lake or newer processor, and you're maybe agnostic over using Windows versus Linux, it's a good reason to switch to Linux just to gain that capability. Or again, a newer processor gets you that capability under Windows. So I know there's always a debate on whether to use Windows or Linux, and a lot of people say use what you want, but there are real world consequences to not trying Linux if you've got an older processor and you're missing out on a feature that you might need. Not everybody needs this, but I'm just pointing that out. So that's the biggest benefit of Plex Pass. So what caught my eye with Crystal's one screenshot was she has a movie and TV show library, and then she has a Harry Potter extended library, which I just took to mean that there's Harry Potter versions that were the extended ones, or maybe like director cuts, that sort of stuff. So I want to talk about that and then show her how to maybe have it a different way that she might enjoy better by, let me see, where am I? Using the multiple editions feature for a movie library, which is a Plex Pass feature. Instead of going through the article, I'm just going to show in real time how we can get this final cut or this director's cut to display next to the year by simply renaming the file to make that happen. So I want to use my test server and show you what I have set up. I have created a test movie library, and this is kind of combined with two different items. There's a lot of public domain media here that I can actually show playing. And then I've used some dummy files to recreate all the Harry Potter movies. So if I play this, I'm not playing the real movie.
Good evening, fellow Plexers.
It's my little 15-second dummy file, and all of these are the same video. But they're named properly to bring them into Plex. So let's go there next to show you how I've named these just simply. Okay, so they're in here. So nothing special, they're just a copy and paste basically from the TMDB entry, but I've used Filebot to do that quickly. Now my normal Filebot expression adds the TMDB source ID to the folder, and it also adds extra information like media characteristics, whether there's embedded English subtitles or unlabeled subtitles, and my Filebot expression will even handle SRT subtitles if they're prepped slightly. So we've got two different file naming formats going on. In this test, I've got the same Harry Potter movies named the same way. So what I've done is I've already taken this out of its folder, and let me find the second one, Chamber of Secrets. Let's take that out of its folder. Let's do 3. So what was the third movie? This one. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to name two of them the same as this. Do you see how I have the proper movie name and then a space, curly brace edition dash extended end curly brace? We're going to make all 3 of them look the same. And I do have a space between the parentheses ending the year, and the curly brace beginning. So now let's go back to our test library, and let me just paste these in at the bottom. So let me take the first one, and now I'm going to cut that, and I'm going to find its folder with the other movie. And I'm going nuts here looking. All right, so I'll paste that in. Now I have two versions of the movie in one folder. This one has a special renaming. Now, you can use a different naming scheme, and that would be called versioning, and that's a Plex article to check out, movie versioning. But this is edition naming. All right, so we'll take this one. Put it in there. And I'm just going blind looking at too many Harry Potter folders or file names. All right, so now the first three movies, we have two versions of each movie. And if I go back to the web app, you see this is already scanning for changes. And what it's done is now it picks up this extended version as a separate version from the original one. The same with this movie. And then again, the same with this one. So this is a way to get the extended versions or an unrated version or a director's cut version or even a colorized version of a movie into your main library and sort it out. All right, so we're going to show one more option for it. So say, let me see, what do I want to do? Let me show you versioning with another Harry Potter movie. And that way I can show you how to use the edition tag a different way. All right, so what would the fourth movie be? Let me rename this versioning. So Plex doesn't really care what comes after this separator of space dash space. That's just another version of the movie. So if you had three versions of this, 4K, 720p, 1080p, you could do this dash space dash 720p, 1080p, 2160p, or 4K, and put all of those in one folder, and Plex will scan it as a duplicate. But then the client device is supposed to be smart enough to play the best version it can based on the bandwidth and its compatibility between it and the server. And you don't need a Plex Pass for that versioning. So now let's put this back into the main library. So we still have two files in one folder, and they're named differently based on versioning. So if we go back to the library, we'll see that it's automatically scanning and detecting credits. And now, Harry Potter may not have been the right one to use. Okay, Goblets of Fire. If I click into it, it just looks like one movie. But if I click more and I choose play version, well, now there's two versions. But it doesn't really tell you which one's which, because they're both the same file, so they're both the same bit rate and resolution. At this point, you can split them apart with those same three dots. When I go back to library mode, now they're both here named the same, and I can quickly check by editing it and hitting info to find which one. And say this was actually the extended one and it was named for versioning because you didn't have a Plex Pass. Well, once you got a Plex Pass, you don't really have to rename it to add the edition. You can go to General and add any edition you want. So instead of extended, I will do I will do unrated. So now the minute I hit save changes, now it picks that up right here, and it's just going to stay a different version. All right, so I want to talk about collections to end this with what you can do without a Plex Pass and what you can do with a Plex Pass through smart collections. So if we edit the library, and go to advanced and slide down, there's a minimum automatic collection size. By default, it's disabled. You can set it to 1 through 4. I like setting it to 2, which means you have to have at least 2 movies on your server to have an automatic collection start. And let's go to TMDB so I can show you where those automatic collections are pulled from. So I'll search Harry Potter. I'll pick the first one. Now if I slide down, you see it's part of a collection, and when I view it and slide down, you can see all the movies that are part of the collection. This is where Plex is going to pull this automatic collection information from. And it's built right in. You don't need a Plex Pass for it. All right, so I'll set it to 2. And there's some options. By default, it's show collections and their items. What that means is there's going to be a new collection tab created in the library. And when you go into the regular library tab, you will see all the individual movies plus the new collection that's created. Sometimes people prefer it differently. You can hide collections but show their items, which means that collection won't show in the library tab. You'll have to change to the collection tab to see it. Or you can hide all movies from the library tab, which are in a collection, while showing the collection in the library. Now that would be great for Harry Potter, but it may not be great for Too Fast and Furious, because some of the movies might start with an F, some might start with T, but a series like Harry Potter, where they all start with Harry Potter, and it's a pretty safe bet. So I like to hide collections but show their items, but I'll leave this at the default setting, and I'll hit Save Changes. Now, in order to build those collections, I have to go into the library and refresh metadata. So let's scan it for good measure, and then go to Manage Library and refresh all metadata. So we'll wait for the scanning to stop. Now you won't see the collection tab until you refresh the web browser. Now the collection tab is here. It's created the automatic Harry Potter collection.
You have a new flash mail.
And our special editions popped into, no matter whether they were named to be a special edition or had the special edition applied afterwards. So this is a pretty neat feature that's available to any Plex Pass owner. So the last thing we'll talk about is a smart collection. Oh, let's go back to this first. You can edit it, and it's pulling multiple options for posters, and you can pick whatever poster you want. You know, if all of yours are 4K rips, UHD rips, you can pick any poster you want, and it will come with multiple backgrounds too. And just save the changes, and you're in like Flint. Okay, so from the library tab, you can create a smart collection with this icon. And we'll use Harry Potter as a topic again. So I'll create smart collection, and I can just have the title contains and it captures everything. Maybe you don't want to use the default TMDB collections because you don't want collections created for everything, and you just want a few smart collections. Well, this is a nice Plex Pass feature. So I could have title contains, is. Well, this would have to be exact. So I'd have to have the full movie name. But contains picks them all up. And then you can sort them differently. Say you want them sorted from or by the year. Now they're sorted from newest to oldest, and if you want to reverse that sort, you click year again, and the directional arrow changes, and now you've got the oldest to the newest. So you can sort them any way you want. And you can actually add multiple criteria, but we won't get into that. This is just a really nice feature. Now let's do something else. You can even sort by edition. So if you wanted to create a collection of extended movies, we can change the title to, where is it, edition. We'll pick is, and we'll pick extended. And now that brings in any movie that's extended, and it's simply the save as. You give it a name. Hit create. We'll go to the collection tab, and now we have this. But now the poster it creates will pick 4 of the movies from the library, and you see how, because there's only 3, it's using the third Harry Potter twice, but you can create or find your own custom artwork and add it in to customize it. So the beauty of the Smart Collection is anything else that is added later that fits the filter, and I'm going to hit these 3 dots and edit the filter. Any future movie that fits the filter we've set up will get automatically added to this Smart Collection. So Crystal or anybody else new to Plex Server, here's a few tips, and I highly recommend compliant Plex naming and structure. And if you're interested, I have a lot of Filebot videos, with a recent one for 2025 that shows you how to use Filebot to make short work of it. And maybe I won't quit the video yet. Maybe we'll just show Filebot really quickly, because it might be like a hook, line, and sinker. So this one's going to give me trouble because even my default Filebot expression won't know what to do with a version, but it will know what to do with an addition, a common addition. And I think we had called this one unrated. We had applied that manually inside of the web app. Okay, so my regular movies are all named to my expression. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight just the Harry Potter movies, right click, and I can open with other application under Pop OS. Filebot's already at the top, and Filebot open. So I'm going to use my default movie expression on this. We have to watch the special edition ones. So this is coming through. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4 special editions that made it through. My Filebot expression will only pick up the common main special editions. I have some colorized movies that I use the edition tag on, edition-colorized. Filebot won't pick up those uncommon special editions. So I can just rename it, validate it to remove illegal characters. And if I refresh this on my NAS, you see how the TMDB ID number or database number or source ID, whatever you want to call it, is now in the movie folders. And if we click in, they're renamed with that TMDB ID number and the extra information about the media characteristics, and of course the extended edition. So Just plug in Filebot. I think it's a Plex server's best friend and something you might want to learn sooner rather than later. So, happy plexing, and I appreciate your viewership.